So let's resize this content area number 1 div to cover half of our screen. So now here in the desktop view, place your cursor inside the div first of all. As a result, we now see some resize grips over on the left and on the right. Now, don't touch the ones on the left. You'll see why later. So we'll go over to the right hand edge and left click on the resize handle, and I'll drag it in to around 6 columns, i.e. 50%. Now again you might be a little bit puzzled because this doesn't quite lock onto the column as we'd want it to. It's snapped just to the right, but no problem, we can solve this. Notice also on our left hand edge of the div, to remove this slight indentation, we would move our cursor over that sort of little arrow button there. And this would allow us to click to align the div with the grid. And it instantly snaps to the left edge, and consequently the right hand edge has now snapped to the 50% width rather than just over. Now just getting back to what I mentioned a second or two ago, if you resize your div from the left, you won't get what you'd expect. It does move the grid, but doesn't resize it. What it does, it moves the right-hand edge over and the left-hand edge by indenting. Now we don't want to indent, we want to resize. So if you did use the left-hand edge, you would be adding a margin left property. We don't want that. So let me reinforce, always resize from the right. Okay, now I'm going to add a second div to this same row now. So I'll head back up to my insert panel and click on the Insert Fluid Grid Layout div tag, and I'm going to name this one Content Area number 2. And I'll leave the checkbox there, Start the New Row checkbox. I'll leave that unchecked and click on OK. You might be saying, this has been sent to a new row. That's not what we asked it to do. Well, that's because Dreamweaver can't know what size we want this new div to be. Just because you want it to be 50%, Dreamweaver doesn't know that. Now, it would be good to have an option to say 50%, etc. We don't, but I'm sure it's on the cards for Dreamweaver CS7. So, until we get CS7, we have to manually adjust its width. And when we do, it'll jump to the row above, provided there is room. So, we'll give it the room required by resizing to 50% once more. So now both divs equally share half of our width. So I'll click inside it and resize to 6 columns, i.e. 50%. And there you go, it immediately moves to the same row as stated. Right, I'm just going to refocus the screen so we can look at this more closely. Here's our header div tag, and by selecting it, you can see down in our properties panel that indeed it is marked as header as its div ID. Our second div tag on a new row is here, main content number 1. And once more, by going to the properties panel, you'll see in the HTML properties its ID is indicated as main content 1. If you want to see all the code for this, then you can switch to live view and then live code and then inspect. By doing this, well, as you know, you can mouse over these areas to focus on the code. Here's our header, and we're textually informed here that this is div ID header. This is the content for layout div tag header. And of course, going to any of these and selecting live and live code and inspector shows the relevant code for each element. I'll refocus the screen once more because I want to whiz the procedure by you again quickly to reiterate how we accomplished this so far. Here's our header layout div tag. So remember to add our main content 1 div tag, we select inside here and ensure it's selected down here too, where the tag says div ID header. Then we would click up here to add a new fluid grid layout div tag, and we would name it, i.e. I named it main content number 1, and I left the checkbox there unchecked. From here, remember we need to resize it to 50%, if that's what we want. So I'll left click here on the right hand edge, remember not the left hand edge, and drag to 6 columns or 50%. And then now you'll need to click on the Align Div with Grid button that equalizes it and snaps it to exactly our chosen 50%. And then for our third layout div tag, ensure the div main content 1 is active down here again, and then click here to add the third fluid grid layout div tag and name it main content 2, whilst leaving the checkbox there unchecked, and OK it. Once more, I need to resize it, so I'll left click on the right hand edge, not the left, and drag it into 50%. And it automatically jumps up to the row above. Now it has enough space. Okay, so that's how we add our div tags to our Fluid Grid layout.